There was a rock in the Aegean, 23 square kilometers of nothing, called Gyaros. When the Senate voted to send a convicted man there, the Emperor Tiberius told them to choose a different island. Tiberius, a mean man by every account we have, he did it twice. In the year 65, Nero ignored every bit of that. A plot to assassinate him had just been uncovered, and in the purge that followed, he accused a Stoic philosopher named Gaius Musonius Rufus of being part of it. The charge was invented. Musonius sailed for Gyaros anyway, and Nero expected the island to do what the island always did, which was make men disappear without Rome having to kill any of them. Didn't work this time. Within a few years, Greeks were sailing out to Gyaros on purpose. They came to hear him teach and to farm, working ground on an island Rome had written off as unable to feed anyone. Long after he was gone, they were still making the trip to see something he'd left behind. Something that by every Roman account of that rock had no business existing. Gyaros sits in the northern Cyclades, near Andros and Tinos. No trees worth the name, no river, and no fresh water that anyone had ever managed to find. That last part is the whole story. Rome had plenty of islands it used for exile, and most of them had a village, a harbor, somebody selling fish. Gyaros had none of that, which meant sending a man there wasn't sending him somewhere. It was removing him. Twice the Senate voted to put someone on that island, and twice Tiberius overruled them. The second time he said the plain thing that Gyaros has no water, and a man whose life you've spared should be given the means to stay alive. Read that again? The Senate proposed it as a punishment. The emperor called it a slow execution. The poets used it as shorthand. When Juvenal wanted a crime foul enough to earn the worst Rome had, he named Gyaros. That's where Nero sent a man in his 60s. Musonius Rufus was not a nobody. He was equestrian class, the rank just below senator, and by his 60s, one of the most famous teachers in Rome. His students came out of senatorial families. People called him the Roman Socrates. Nero disliked philosophers on principle. He suspected them of quietly working out a future that didn't have him in it. And Musonius had a history. 5 years earlier, when Nero banished a Stoic named Rubellius Plautus, Musonius went into exile with him. Nobody asked him to. He just packed. Killing him would have been simple. It would also have made him permanent. Rome had learned this the expensive way. The dead ones get quoted forever. Exile was better. It stripped a man of his citizenship, his property, and his city. And for a teacher, it took something worse, which was the students, the arguments, the audience. Everything a man like that is actually made of. That was the plan. Put him on a rock with no water and no people, and let him become a man who used to matter. Then the boats started arriving. Students came, and that's the part nobody planning the sentence accounted for. They sailed out to a penal rock in the middle of the Aegean, and they kept doing it in groups for years. What they found, there was not a broken man waiting to die politely. He had found water. On the island, whose entire reputation rested on having none, the island an emperor twice refused to use because a man could not stay alive there, Musonius located a spring. Then he and his students put the ground to work and started farming. Our source here is a writer called Philosopher, working a century and a half later, so hold the details lightly. But he reports something that's hard to invent. The Greeks kept sailing to Gyaros long after Musonius was gone, and not for him. For the spring. It became a thing you went out there to see. Rome's most feared punishment, the sentence the Senate reached for when it wanted to remove a human being from the world, turned into a place people made a trip to visit. Nero tried to take away his students, and his students got on boats. Which raises the question this whole story has been walking toward. Not how he survived it. Why it didn't touch him. We have some of what he taught, written down by a student. One lecture is titled, "That Exile Is Not an Evil," and reading it is strange because it's a man arguing about the exact sentence he was serving. His case runs like this. Exile doesn't take the air, or the sun, or water, or the ground under your feet, or the company of other people. It doesn't stop you thinking clearly or acting well. And acting well was the only thing that was ever your job. What exile confiscates is property, status, and the right to stand in a particular city. Look hard at that list. None of it was ever yours. All of it was on loan, from people who could recall it at any time. And now they have. Then the line that gives it teeth. A resourceful man is resourceful anywhere. If your life falls apart in exile, exile isn't what ruined it. You can hear how that sounds from a comfortable chair. What makes it land is that we can check his work, because he said it on the island. Musonius had a student who arrived in Rome in a slave caravan with a shattered knee that nobody set. He was bought by a freedman named Epictetus, a secretary to Nero. Just sit with the geometry of that. The teacher gets erased by the emperor, and the teacher's best student is a crippled slave inside the emperor's own house. That student was Epictetus. What he taught became a short handbook called the Enchiridion, and its first move is the one Musonius made on Gyaros. Some things are up to you, most things are not, and nearly all human misery comes from confusing the two. The chain didn't stop there. Marcus Aurelius read Epictetus carefully, and what he wrote in private, in what we now call the Meditations, runs straight back through Epictetus to the old man on that island. 19 centuries later, an American Navy pilot named James Stockdale was shot down over North Vietnam. 8 years in prison at Ho Lo, the Hanoi Hilton. Tortured repeatedly. He'd read the Enchiridion in graduate school, and he said plainly that it was what he had with him in that cell, and that it worked. The philosophy Rome tried to strand on a rock, and the Aegean got out. Musonius outlived him. Nero was declared an enemy of the state in 68 and killed himself before anyone could do it for him. Musonius came back to Rome, was exiled a second time years later, and came back from that too. He died an old man in a city that had twice tried to get rid of him. Gyaros went back to being empty. Then, in 1948, Greece opened a prison there. The detainees sent out to that rock were made to build the compound themselves, cutting into the stone with the sea on every side. It stayed in use, on and off, until 1974, and something over 20,000 people passed through it. 19 centuries after Tiberius told the Senate that no man could live on that island, modern governments looked at the same rock and reached the same conclusion Nero did. It's a good place to put people you want gone. Tiberius had it right. Gyaros was harsh, and it had nothing human about it, and a man sent there was handed a slow death with the paperwork of mercy. What Nero found out is that the island was never the variable. Rome could take the city, the property, the name, the audience, and the water. One old man went out there and demonstrated in front of witnesses who kept sailing back to check that this still left him with everything he considered his. Subscribe for more detailed history.